Alter from Altars Aside, and today we're going to talk about system communication through tarot. If you do not have dissociative identity disorder, you can also use this spread to connect with your subconscious, conscious mind, and higher consciousness. I use this spread in almost every single reading. This is the beginning spread for me, and I also use this spread when I'm teaching tarot. This is the first spread I teach all of my students because honestly, it's the most useful in my experience. Something I recommend is journaling through your tarot reading. I don't journal every tarot reading that I do because I do, oh my God, I don't know, probably about 10 to 15 a week, but that's for clients. For myself, I do journal when I do system readings because I want my alters to have a chance to communicate. And some of that can come through the writing. Some of it can also come through reading it later and making a note. So try to have something nearby where you can take notes about what you're seeing. Another thing that can happen is clarification. If I pull 3 cards for one altar and I think it means one thing, but they think it means another, it's important to get that information down so that we can, either discuss it or move in a direction that benefits both of us. Before you actually do a tarot reading with your alters or for them, it's important to be aware of a couple of things. In my experience, when I talk about DID, my alters tend to come to the front because it's their story too, and they want to have some input on what we're talking about. This also happens with tarot. It's not quite the same. It's not quite the same reasons, but the result is the same. So I end up being very co-conscious when I'm doing the readings. And sometimes a different alter will come out or switch with me to the front and fully take over and write a bunch of information into the journal. But not always. And honestly, that's pretty rare nowadays. I don't have what I like to call hard switches where someone just yanks me out of the front and then tosses me aside. Instead, I have more of a consensual system set up, which took a lot of training, but it's probably about 70% effective. When you're doing these readings, you should be ready for your alters to be present and to start being talkative within your mind and possibly distracting. So make sure that you get down as much information as you can for each alter and leave space in the journal for them to communicate with you later, because sometimes a different alter will come out the next day or something and they will have things to say about what they read in the journal. Before we get started, I want to say a couple of things about system communication. This is something that I really struggled with off and on throughout my life, and I think it's one of the first things that I looked up after I got diagnosed, because communicating with your system is one of the things that leads to healing. It leads to a life that you can live where you remember what's going on, or you have access to other alters who have those memories and you can gain information from them. System communication is also important because when you are living with different alters and you don't communicate, I'm trying to frame everything that I talk about with DID from my perspective, because sometimes when you are talking about this disorder, it can be very confusing for people who also have a diagnosis. The reason that it can be confusing for people who also have a diagnosis is because this is all happening within my own mind, and my mind is different than yours, and my trauma is different than yours, and my healing is different than yours. So everything is very personalized. That being said, for me, system communication has helped me significantly. And it's something that I had a really hard time figuring out for a while. When I was around, I think I was about 11 to 14, I had kind of a committee situation where I felt like my altars were all sitting around talking about the decisions I was making and what I was going to be doing next, and then I would follow their direction for the most part. That was not an example of good communication within my system, although during that time it was probably the best that it could have been. Anyway, as I have gotten older and gone through healing, I have reached out to my altars in various ways, and some of them are through notebooks or creating multiple Twitter accounts or Tumblr accounts and talking through messages that way, which is somewhat effective, and it's good for quick daily communication if you can actually remember to check the messages or reread your journal or your notebook. I sometimes have trouble with that, but I'm working on it. I came up with the idea of communicating with my altars through tarot because I feel like it gets to a deeper level instead of just dealing with what kind of ice cream do you want. Okay, we're going to get started. The first thing you're going to do is shuffle your cards and lay them out into the consciousness spread. I like to shuffle my cards at least 3 times in 2 different ways. So the first one I do is the bridge. And then the second one I do is just one of these. And again, I like to do it 3 times. It's just a number I like. It doesn't really matter how many numbers. It's just a number I like. It doesn't really matter how many shuffles you do. Just pick something and stick with it. Then I cut the deck twice, so there are 3 piles. It's important to remember the order. So the bottom of the deck goes here, and then the top is here. Bottom of the deck, top. Bottom of the deck, top. These cards that fell out, I just set them aside in case I have a question and they can answer the question later. Okay, this is where you're coming from. Now, if you don't have a system or you're just doing a consciousness reading, it's subconscious, conscious, higher conscious, okay? But if you are doing a system reading, since that's what we're here for, you want to decide which row is for which altar. So if you already know your system well enough to have names, like I could say this is for Lexi, Emma, and Jax, okay? But if you don't know your system well enough, then you could just say this is for the host, which is the person, probably the person doing the reading. Or you could just say this is for me, this is for my other altar, and this is for the whole system. You can decide kind of what you want it to be. The important part is that you know before you start which row is going to be which altar or which system communication. Hopefully that made sense. The other thing about DID is it gets a little hard to explain. Where the altar is coming from, something that they consistently think about the most, this row might be related to the trauma that they hold or the time frame that they came into being. And then this middle row is what the altar is very aware they want you to know. And then this higher level is what the altar wants you to know, like what is of the highest good for you both to know about how your relationship can work together to best support your system. Hopefully all of that makes sense. If you come across something and you're like, I don't understand what this card means, you can take a second deck and shuffle, shuffle, shuffle while you're thinking, so this is 3 of Pentacles. So what is the 3 of Pentacles? Why is it on the board? What does it mean in relation to whatever altar? And then cut. So just, I'll slow that down. Cut, put the top away, take this bottom level, and then I always like to pull the bottom card just so I can see what it is. And then 1, 2, 3. These cards will tell you what this card is about. Lastly, just as a disclaimer in case you haven't heard it, tarot is your own thing. If you just want to throw all of your cards on a table and then choose the 12 that stand out to you because those are the ones that are calling to you, do that. You don't have to shuffle 3 times. You don't have to cut anything the way that I do. You don't have to do anything the way I do it. But I do read tarot professionally. I'm pretty good at it, and I have a ton of experience. There is a reason I do the things that I do with shuffling, and there is a reason I do the things I do with where I take the cards from. So you are welcome to steal my, I don't want to say steal, you are welcome to adopt my practices. I hope all of you enjoyed this, and if you did your own system reading, please leave me a comment, let me know how it went. As a reminder, I do go live on Thursdays for tarot readings, and if you're a subscriber, you get 1 free question. So see you on Thursday.